Christ is risen. Welcome to our rest of the readings for Easter Sunday. We got Acts chapter 10, verses 34 through 43 for our first reading. Colossians 3, verses 1 through 4 is our epistle lesson. And then Matthew 28, verses 1 through 10 is our gospel account of the resurrection. Pastor David preached on Colossians chapter 3 on Easter Sunday, so we're going to take a look at our other two readings. But before we get into the first reading with Acts 10, we're going to actually start with our gospel reading. We're going to take a look at Matthew's resurrection account and see kind of what he's got in store for us before we get to kind of Peter's talking in Acts chapter 10. But in Matthew 28, so we have Peter's account. We had looked at Peter's kind of crucifixion account last week that led up to the seal being put on the tomb. The guards are placed there, and now as we get to chapter 28, we're at the day after the Sabbath, the first day of the week. So Sunday in our calendar, Saturday would be the Sabbath. So early dawn on Sunday, we've got two Marys coming to the tomb. Matthew tells us a little differently than some of the other Gospels do. They're coming to look at the tomb. We're not told that they've got the spices, they're coming to prepare the body, but rather they're coming to the tomb. We've got Mary Magdalene, very commonly associated throughout the Gospels, but then we've got this other Mary, who's referenced at the sitting at the tomb back in verse 61. She's also at the cross. But when we look at John's account of all of this, we actually get a little more detail that this is actually Jesus' aunt. Mm-hmm. This is Mary, the mother of Jesus, her sister. So these two in Matthew's account are the two that are heading to the tomb to see what's up and what can be done for Jesus.
And Matthew includes it. Things start off with an earthquake, which Matthew has sort of the bookends of the earthquake of Jesus' death, now the earthquake of Jesus' resurrection, and ties it down with one angel of the Lord came down and rolls back the stone from the tomb, appears like lightning, clothes white as snow. And the reaction of the guards is they're terrified. And this is one of the times when angels don't show up and say, "Don't be afraid."
Yeah.
It's like, be afraid. Be very afraid. And so they're basically like dead men. They're knocked over, unconscious, just because of, again, an earthquake. This bright angelic being shows up, and they are overwhelmed with everything that's happening. So, and again, it'll be how that all ties in with, we've got resurrection witnesses from the enemies of Jesus, that they're the ones who know what happens.
Yeah, and it's unclear kind of from the text, when the Marys get there, are these guards lying on the ground, passed out, terrified? And so they're coming upon this scene of, we've got what look like dead guards outside the tomb, and then our angel sitting on the stone. We're not completely sure. Verses 11 through 15 of this chapter, which weren't part of our reading, kind of give us then the account of the guards as they go into town, and they end up telling the chief priest what's happened. But it's unclear if they had already left the tomb before the women got there, or if they kind of come to after the women have left, and then scamper into town. Because verse 11 only tells us, while the women were on their way, some of the guards went into the city and reported to the chief priest. It must have been maybe a little more local than a broad area feeling it sort of a thing, because the women don't seem to be concerned about an earthquake before coming to the tomb or on their way to the tomb. But they get there. If they see this scene of guards on the ground, angel there, it would make sense that they are also going to be quite afraid. Not only at the sight of an angel, because every time an angel shows up, it's not precious moments. But when you read through Ezekiel and you get this picture of what angels look like, it's one of those that we go, this is a kind of a psychedelic looking thing to us, and it would terrify us. An angel is not something that's going to make us feel warm and fuzzy. It's something that will terrify us. And so, again and again through Scripture, we see the angels always having to tell people, don't be afraid. Once again, they tell the women that.
Yeah, it's don't be afraid. And again, the angel then comforts them with, I know you're looking for Jesus who was crucified. He's not here, just as he said. And so then it is that invitation, come, look, see the place where he's laid. He's not here. And then we have the go quickly and tell his disciples. And again, we get this, he's going ahead of you into Galilee, which Jesus had talked about this, but they forget. In the midst of everything going on, it's not going to be, and we'll see that as we get into, this next Sunday with Doubting Thomas, that they don't leave yet. They wait until Thomas also gets to see Jesus. And then we will find them all up in Galilee later on, where Jesus told them to go.
Yeah, and so angel basically says, you know what, I've done my job now. I've told you what to do. The women kind of verify what the angels told them. Yet we're told they leave the tomb afraid, yet filled with joy. I think the better way of saying it is the women are confused.
Yeah.
It's that awkward feeling of I'm really happy. I realize something wonderful has happened, but at the same time I don't really know what it means, so I'm kind of afraid by that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jesus shows himself to them. He greets them, and he also has to tell them there.
Don't be afraid.
Yep, don't be afraid, because he even realized the women are still fearful, but now they've been given this, and he gives them the same instructions that the angel just gave. Go and tell the disciples. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee. There they will see me. In other gospel accounts, we get him also singling out Peter, because we recognize Peter has denied Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
If you were in Peter's shoes, you'd be kind of going, does he really mean everyone? And what am I in for when Jesus sees me?
Yeah, so we'll get that personal reassurance for Peter. And again, it's the confusion that is going on in all of their minds as they're trying to put this together. As we'll see in other gospel accounts too, where Mary Magdalene is going, when she meets Jesus, I think they've stolen his body, because again, empty tomb, all this is going on. What's going on? There's a lot of confusion because again, they went there grieving, and now the tomb's empty. And everybody else's reaction will be, the Emmaus disciples, well, these women said the tomb was empty, Jesus risen, but we don't know what to think. So it's not until they see Jesus that everybody will go, oh, yeah, now we remember.
And Jesus uses that familiar term of calling the disciples his brothers, which is a peaceful term. That's really kind of what he's focused on, is kind of getting back with the 11 and being able to share with them what's going on, help them become those pillars of the church that they are going to become, and prepare them for, frankly, the tough road that is ahead. And Peter is one of those folks that we end up, we follow a lot of his story through the book of Acts, as well as he becomes that vocal leader of the 11, of the apostles. And in chapter 10 of Acts, we've got to kind of back up just a little bit to set the stage of verses 34 through 43. It's Peter has been summoned to a Gentile's house, to Cornelius's house. He's there. He's had this vision previously that's kind of told him the things that are unclean are not actually unclean, and also you need to go with this guy that's coming to call you. And so Peter ends up in this house with them. He even kind of tells him, it's not really part of our Jewish law for me to be associating with you, but God's shown me that kind of the way I was thinking about this isn't really right.
And it is, that push that is needed because, of course, remember Matthew's gospel ends with the Great Commission, go make disciples of all nations, but they've been focusing on Jews, telling the good news there. So, yeah, Peter has to have that vision of the sheet, and then the guys show up, and it's, okay, go with them. So now it's when Peter goes into the Gentiles' home, which, as he says, as a Jew, I wouldn't be here normally. But I see the pieces all coming together. And so then Peter says, I see it. God accepts all people, and that's why I'm here in the home of a Roman, a Gentile, where I would ordinarily never go.
And as he kind of reflects on this and begins to kind of talk with them, he kind of gives what definitely for Peter is a very short sermon, considering what
Yes.
Pentecost Sunday looks like
Yeah.
for him. But he ends up basically kind of recounting the gospel story. And
Yeah.
if you think about the Gospel of Mark and the way it ends up being structured, you can see Peter's influence then on Mark writing the gospel. Most likely it's believed that he's writing the gospel for Peter. Peter's kind of dictating it to him.
Yeah.
And because Mark's gospel starts with John's baptism. And that's where Peter picks this up as he begins recounting this good news of peace through Jesus Christ. And it's an interesting term, the way that he describes the gospel there, good news of peace, because it's that idea of reconciliation between God and man through Jesus, through the cross, through the empty tomb. And he just kind of lays out the whole gospel story then in brief for them.
This testimony, but it is sort of the Apostles' Creed as he summarizes this is what the faith is all about. Jesus' baptism, his preaching ministry, doing good, healing, and then his death and his resurrection, killed by hanging on a tree. God raised him from the dead. We're sent to go tell everyone. And again, it's God commanded us, or Jesus commanded us to preach to all people.
And it's not just about his own eyewitness, which eyewitness testimony is always good when you've got people who can verify it, but he also points out that it's the prophets too. You can look at what we as the eyewitnesses are saying, but you can also go back to the prophets and see how they testify about him and everything that he's done and how he has completed all of these things. Is all about is Matthew trying to show the Jewish community how all of these different scriptures have been fulfilled through Jesus' actions, through his words, and the things that are done to him. And so Peter's kind of meshing all of that together here.
Yeah. And it is a good news that he announces that everyone who believes receives forgiveness of sins through Jesus. So it is, Peter's leading up to that point of, I now get it. And then, in the verses that follow, we get, the Holy Spirit, the Gentile Pentecost comes. But it is a good news of faith for those who will receive the good news of what God has done in Jesus, the one who was hung on the tree, cursed on the tree, killed, but raised by God for all people.
So this gives us just the kind of that snippet look of the entire gospel message when we end up reading that on Easter Sunday. So that even though we may not have time to recount the entire thing, Peter sums it up for us really well here in a very short reading that we're able to share in the midst of our worship service as we enter into this season of Easter. And so for the next 40 days, we look forward to that time that Jesus is going to have with his disciples. There's more private teaching that takes place. We'll cover some of those in some of our readings. And then we'll look towards the Ascension, and then 10 days later, we have Pentecost that comes along as well. So we'll let you have a chance to look at the questions on the screen, dig into the text a little bit more as you continue in your Easter joy.